Susan Speakman is back. Why does the left salivate so much over the idea of getting President Trump impeached? Ever since Nixon, they've dreamed of Republican perp walks and frog-marching officials out of the White House, and yet the only modern president to have been impeached was a Democrat. Is it even up the score, or is it just blind hatred of conservative principles? I got to tell you, Susan, I was salivating over the thought of Barack Obama being impeached, and unlike Donald Trump, at least to date, I think there's plenty of reason to impeach Barack Obama. Plenty of reasons, not the least of which is his Russian connections and his communicating with the Secretary of State using classified documents on unsecured servers, and asked Vladimir to cool it until after the election when I'll be more flexible, and this whole thing in Benghazi was due to a movie, and so on and so on and so on and so on. The difference, I think, is that they knew, and we knew too, that Barack Obama was never going to be impeached. And the reason he was never going to be impeached was because of people like John McCain, who prior to the election in 2008 essentially threw in the towel and said, I'm not going to be the first person, I'm not going to be the person to stand in the way of the first black president. And that would have been a nice thing to have told all of us before we nominated him. But when I remember Mitch McConnell saying in 2013, 14, somewhere in there, saying impeachment is off the table. What do you mean it's off the table? Why is it off the table? It's not off the table, Mitch. It's your job. If the man commits, it doesn't matter who the president is. If the president is committing crimes and misdemeanors and acts of treason or whatever, you don't get to say it's off the table. Your job is to make sure it stays on the table. And furthermore, you idiot, you miserable snapping turtle, Mitch, if you tell the president that impeachment's off the table, then what do you think that's going to do to his already out-of-control power grab, you moron? But we all know why he said it. He said it because the idea of impeaching a black president is just simply not imaginable to people like Mitch McConnell. And here we are back with the race thing again. And the only thing I have to say about this whole race issue is, if this is how they're going to play, and it's how they've been playing, it's all they know how to do, then we're going to play that game too. I don't care anymore. He deserved to be impeached for a number of reasons, and the fact that he's black should not protect him from being impeached in the same way that the fact that he's black should not cause him to be impeached. It's pretty simple, really. So, yes, the left hates Donald Trump more than we hated Barack Obama. Hard to imagine, because I was not a fan of his. But I don't think we ever got to the state of madness that we're seeing now. I mean, I was proud to be a part of a number of Tea Party protests and proud to stand in big groups of people or outdoors in events and criticize the guy. But I don't remember being so angry that I went walking down the street and trying to find, Barack Obama supporters and hitting them over the head with a bike lock. I don't remember any of that. So what you've got here is they are so powerless, and it's not even just that they're powerless, because we were powerless in 2008. We had nothing. We had no House, no Senate, no president. We were going to lose a lot of court appointees. We got a wise Latina, and then we got Kagan. Kagan looks to me like the person who gets the coffee for the Supreme Court. But in any event, we got stuck with them, and it was hard. It was tough, but we did it, and we didn't riot, and we didn't do any of these things. The left modern leftism is a philosophy of emotion. Their entire thing is based on wishful thinking. The new firewall I'll be releasing the next day or two is based on this. It's called the Republic of Emotion, and it's got to do, just as a launching board, with the fact that when they allow young men, people who are born male, I'm not trying to be politically correct, I'm just trying to make the case crystal clear. I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. When they say that a person who's born male but who identifies as a female can run in women's athletics and win everything, then you realize that that person has to run. He or she, whatever you want to call him, has to be allowed to run, because if that person's not allowed to run, then there are, in fact, insurmountable differences between men and women that cannot be wished away. And if that's true, then that means there's an external reality that cannot be wished away. And if there's an external reality that could not be wished away, then nothing that they believe in makes any sense. They know it. The only reason you can have progressivism is if you deny the entire idea of reality. Not that you just argue against reality, you just deny that reality exists. You just keep spending money, and people say, well, what's going to happen when we hit the debt ceiling? Well, then we'll raise the debt ceiling. Well, sooner or later, this debt's going to come due. Yeah, well, it's not going to come due today, probably. So if you wish something hard enough, it makes it so. And this is their entire philosophy. And so that's why transsexual. By the way, this was not even a transsexual person. This was a biological male who simply identified in Connecticut, identified as a girl, and went in there and won every single race handily. If there's an external reality, then the left is doomed, and so they have to pretend that there isn't one. They have to pretend that this is fair, that this is not only fair but noble. But this is where the left starts to eat its own, right? It's what I talked about on the Hot Mic show today, where with what's his name. Their philosophy eventually comes to such a confrontation with reality that it starts to put them into an either-or situation on some of their core principles. They back Islam generally because it makes them feel virtuous to say we should allow anybody into the country. Who are we to say that our culture is better than theirs? That gives them that moral authority little boost, unearned moral authority boost that they like. So they're fine with that until all of a sudden you find places in Germany where women are being raped by Muslims in proportions so far out of control that it's not even proportion that it's not even up for discussion what's going on here. And then they're stuck where now they've got women cowering in fear because who outweighs who now? Does our feminist values outweigh our virtue signaling in terms of, who are we to judge people? Turns out the feminism doesn't outweigh it. That's why women in Germany and Sweden and elsewhere are just running around terrified because they had to make a decision. And coming back to this example of this runner at this Connecticut, Alanya, I want to say his and her name is. This is where they're stuck. They have to have, if Alanya identifies as a woman, according to their theory, wishing makes things true. So if a person who's born as a boy identifies as a woman, says, I feel like a woman, then he has to be allowed to race with the women, because if he can't, then there's an external reality, and if there's an external reality, nothing makes sense. Then you can't have socialism. You can't have this dream of new people that are going to come and work hard as they do for other people as they do for themselves. And if it turns out that there's a difference between men and women that's insurmountable and real, then there is no such thing as free health care. So you find that they're trapped in a world where they have to stay consistent with their own inconsistency. They have to say, if you want it, it is true. And so that's it. But again, they get in conflict with their own values now because they made this one person, Alanya, happy. And Alanya's parents said, just let her do what she wants to do. Why all the fuss? She's happy. And why all the fuss? Well, the fuss is, what about the 20 young women who had no chance to beat this person? Or the 100 maybe that lost in the case of, the various levels of a tournament, a state championship, all the heats and so on. They had no chance to beat this person, none. And so what about them? What about their feelings? What about empowering women? What about, girls should have a, chance to go out there and compete too. What about them? They're silent on this issue, and they have to be. And the reason they have to be is because this is where their entire philosophy doesn't make any sense. Are you going to back Muslim immigration, or are you going to back the women who are being raped by Muslim immigrants? Are you going to back a person who's born a male who says he's a female and wants to run with the women's category? Are you going to back that guy? Or are you going to back the women who are going to be defeated by this person? Somebody pointed it out. It wasn't me. Somebody said, if you let this go on, I know I'm getting a little off the track here, but that's what the show's all about. They said, if you let this go on, There will no longer be men and women's sports. There will be men's sports and men who identify as women's sports. Those will be the two categories. Because, as I point out in my video, there's many high schools and virtually every college in the country has at least one or two people on the track team. Young males, teenage boys who can run faster than the fastest time ever run by a woman. And that is not something that they can face. I don't enjoy pointing this out. I'm certainly not pointing it out to be mean. I'm pointing it out to say that their entire philosophy is predicated on these huge emotional leaps. And that's hopefully going to help answer your question. They know they can't do anything right now. So they keep waiting for the big bombshell. And to some degree, it's like, well, we were waiting for the big bombshell too, but it seems honestly, genuinely to me, I'm willing to be told why I'm wrong here, but I don't think I am. Seems honestly, genuinely to me that the bombshells we were waiting for were actual bombshells. Hillary Clinton posted, she said she didn't have any top secret information on that server. She had, what was the final number? Does anybody know? 63,000, something like that. Secret information, top secret emails on that server. That is an impeachable, go to prison for the rest of your life offense. And we never saw it because it turns out that the guy who's prosecuting the case, James Comey, who I kept having faith in, is some reason why Comey's doing this. And it turns out the reason why Comey was doing what he was doing was because Comey is, in fact, as Donald Trump said, he's a nutcase. He's a nutcase. James Comey is fascinated, obsessed with being a celebrity. He's the Judge Ito of this generation. And he is absolutely addicted to the spotlight, being Mr. Square, leader of the FBI and, the unimpeachable source of everything. He's leaking top secret information because he doesn't like the president. And all of this stuff is genuinely actionable in any kind of a society where you have actual rule of law. But the pop culture is the great shield, right? It's the not just the lack of the news media, it's the news media, the pop culture, all of it is the great shield that protects them, and it's protected them so far. So Susan, they keep thinking the big reveal's going to happen, and they keep getting disappointed. And as long as it's about the Russia story, they're going to continue to be disappointed. That makes me happy. And so when they realize that they can't get their impeachment, then they start to get into their assassination porn. Kathy Griffin holding up the severed head of Donald Trump, or Snoop Dogg, gunning him down in a video, or the famous play in New York City in Julius Caesar where Donald Trump is Julius Caesar and he's stabbed to death, and all the New York liberals give it a standing ovation at the end of every evening, and that's all they've got left now. They've got their infantile temper tantrums, and they've got their street muscle, and they've got their Antifa fascist thug cowards, and they can smash windows, and they can smash things, and they can talk about, the resistance and all that other stuff. By the way, the common sense resistance was never a resistance to government. The common sense resistance was never, as far as I could remember anyway, as far as I could see, was never a, hey, you know what, we've got to blow this system up. It was an alternative to the world turned upside down. And basically, that's what it was, and that's what it remains. But that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about civil disobedience. And I was never talking about civil disobedience. I was, as I recall, I was extremely clear about the fact that, if you're gonna fight against this kind of inversion of reality, the first thing you have to do is you have to obey the law. If for no other reason, then because if you don't, they'll give them a good reason to lock you up. But more importantly, if you don't respect the law, then what are we fighting for in the first place? So, so they're going to continue to get more and more crazy. There is not a chance, with this quick caveat, if it turned out that Donald Trump did something that was actually genuinely impeachable, then I'd probably be in favor of his impeachment. It would be a tough one because I sure would hate to give them the satisfaction of it, but, principles trump feelings for me and not the other way around. It's not true for the left. But I don't think that's happened or is going to happen. And so if these Republicans do not do something pretty fast, I don't see any way that we're going to continue to hold the House or the Senate in 2018. And if we lose this opportunity, we have some we deserve everything that's going to happen to us after that. When I say we, I mean the roughly 250 people in Washington who call themselves Republicans. You can't blame the Democrats for wanting to be communists. That's what they are. But when we elected all these people to stop all this stuff like Obamacare, and again and again and again and again and again, they can't do this simple thing that they've been talking about doing for 6, 7, 8 years now, then I'm watching this whole thing just sail away. And if that's the case, then it is time to redraw the political party maps here. By the way, as I've got one last post for Wayne Allen Root that I forgot to put up, but we're going to do, starting next week, we're going to do, or maybe even starting later this week, I did an interview with, oh my God, what's his name? Dave Rubin. And Dave Rubin and I disagree on a few things and agree on some other things. And I think, I said to Dave, I said, look, the two of us together could put together a political platform that would appeal to 80%, 85% of the American population. And I think if these Republicans don't do something pretty quick, then that's going to be the outcome.